Very much, Speaker. I rise today to speak on this, on the National Electricity Victoria Amendment VicGrid Bill 2024. And it is a fascinating experience hearing some of the rhetoric which comes out of the members of the government's mouths as they try to convert everybody to a certain position in the world that simply does not reflect accurate history nor the current situation in any way, shape or form. I would encourage each and every one of the city-centric Labor MPs in this chamber to make their way out to regional Victoria and speak to just a couple of the landholders who have engaged with either VicGrid, which has been established for more than 2 years now, even though this legislation pretends that it's a brand new thing, that we're going to do things differently. Guess what? Locals have already had their experience with VicGrid.
Yeah,
they've already had their experience and they understand exactly what this is all about. And that is all about not listening to community concerns. We can all in our region, in country Victoria, in people who actually understand rural communities, who bother to listen and engage to people who live in the country, we remember that footage. We remember that footage of seeing a security guard throwing young Billy to the ground because Billy was daring to bring a speaker into a community meeting because the older people in the community couldn't hear what was being said. Now, this is what's happening, is that the government are tackling young people to the ground who are trying to help their local community in the efforts of consultation. And I hear the laughing from Labor because they do not care about country people. This is funny to Labor MPs in this chamber. And I know that the member for Wendouree is in here, and you have got a very interesting record when it comes to engaging with your local people and standing up for them against policy which just harms their communities. As does the member for Ripon. I note that I haven't seen her speak on this legislation yet. She likes to say one thing quietly to local people, and do I hear her say it in here?
Has she fronted up to any of the forums?
Has not fronted up to one single forum. No single thing that VicGrid have hosted. She has not been there and will not stand up for her community.
Member for Laverton, on a point of order.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. Whilst I absolutely take delight in listening to the member for Lowen, I do think, excuse me, I do, the point of order, excuse me, member for Lowen, the point of order is that you have strayed so far from the bill, I'm unsure what you are talking about.
It's not a point of order. The member for Lowen to continue.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to inform the Labor MPs in the chamber what is actually happening in Western Victoria. Now, you are dead set certain that VNI West is the #1 way to go, and I've heard the member for Pascoe Vale speaking about how renewables are so important we need to expand them. You know what? If the government was truly focused on engaging and getting access to more renewables, you would look at Plan B. And what is Plan B? You should all know what Plan B is, because many of us have raised this opportunity, this great option that Bruce Mountain has put forward in a fabulous document called No Longer Lost in Transmission. And if you haven't read it, I am more than happy to make this document available to the House. Now, I would like to just reference some statistics on this. Now, Plan B is essentially upgrading existing power lines rather than going through prime agricultural land, going through areas where there are no easements at all, where we've got power lines which are going right by houses in areas that people just don't want transmission lines because they've never had. Well, I actually would like to raise and look at some of the compare and contrast of VNI West versus Plan B. Now, let's have a look, because I'm getting interjections from across the table because apparently the member for Yan Yan is now an expert in VNI West, which is great to see. But let's just go back to the document rather than taking her word for it, because we never take Labor's word for it because they consistently put out mistruths. Now, let's have a look. So what is exactly the new thing? Require mining widening of 10 metres, minor widening 1,000 kilometres. Requires new easements, 130 kilometres for Plan B. How many kilometres of new easements for VNI West? Oh, apparently the same we hear from Yan Yan. I'm sorry, but it's actually 1,270 kilometres of brand new easements. Over 1,000 kilometres of new easements. You can hear, I'd say you could hear the rattling of the nod, but I don't even think there's a rattle in there at this point in time. And we look at the capital cost. This is the thing. We hear from this government all the time, renewables will cost less. We're going to drive down the cost of living. Guess what? You look at the transmission lines and you are going to drive power bills through the roof. Through the roof. We know that even with the difference between Plan B and VNI West, that cost, which is over $1 billion a year, $1 billion a year will actually work out as an increase on household bills of about 30%. And for larger consumers, our businesses, the people who create jobs in this state, it's going to either double or treble their transmission costs. Now that is a problem, and the government, you never hear this from the Labor government, you never hear that by expanding this infrastructure, it's not the government paying from it for this magic bucket that everything comes from. It ends up on your power bill. So every time you hear of a Labor MP saying we're keeping cost of living down, do not believe them, because their drive to renewables means more transmission lines, and the more transmission lines we have means the higher the cost on every single energy bill in this state. Every single household will have a higher energy bill. Every single business will have a higher energy bill, and that will close down businesses in this state. It is already driving businesses to move interstate, where they are looking at sensible options with existing infrastructure and upgrading the infrastructure they've got, and they're making sure that they have better options and reliable energy for their local community. Now we're seeing this odd little conflict, everything. If you question anything, if you listen to what the government say and what they do, they're two completely different things. Even in this legislation, we hear that VicGrid is going to be responsible for community consultation. But what happened just last week? What happened just last week? We had an announcement last week that we're going to have a development facilitation project which would sidetrack, actually completely push aside any community consultation at all. The other thing that it will do, and this is the concern that people have actually in my local community, because while Labor likes to prosecute country people as being anti-environmental, you know what people are concerned about? This sideways process will actually not just silence community consultation, it will also mean there is no requirement for an EES.
Yes.
There will not be the requirement for the environment to be considered as part of this, and it is very concerning to my local people.
Minister at the table, point of order.
On a point of order, can I bring the member back to the bill and also ensure that when she's referring to matters, they are factual?
My locals are very concerned about it, and Minister, if you would like to come and meet with them, please come and do, because they are very concerned about it and they haven't been able to get access from information from the Minister for Planning. So given that she's here and so interested in listening to the community and getting factual information about their concerns around the environment, I invite the Minister to come with me to that Bulgana area and meet with local people who are impacted by VNI West. I will put forward that in writing, and I do appreciate the Minister's interest in that matter. We've also got concerns from Laverton saying, oh, this will empower the CEO of VicGrid. You know what? What about empowering the communities that are going to be impacted by this? What about supporting and listening to farmers? And you might say, oh, it's just 2% of farmland that's going to go. Well, that's not what's in the government reports. 2%. In the government reports, which has now been taken down off the internet to keep hidden, it will be 70% of agricultural land will host renewables going forward to reach your targets. Now, I can't see anything in this bill that talks about agricultural zones. I can't see anything about that. This government relies on the income from and of the economic benefit of the agricultural sector. Our smallest rural communities rely on the strength of the agricultural sector to keep those local businesses, schools and hospitals alive. By doing this cutthroat transmission across to having just a host of renewable energy in country Victoria, you're going to kill the agricultural sector. Listen to them. Get it right. You can do that. You can deliver more renewables with Plan B. Support Plan B. Make sure you listen to our country communities.